This is Lord Everett Devore, and you're listening to the Three Count Podcast on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your wrestling fix today.
I'm in fashion,
Welcome everybody to another great edition of the Three Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And by now, it's like our 200th and something episode. Just say it with me, okay? I am your Sherpa. That's right, like your tribal chief, acknowledge me. But like every good Sherpa, you got to have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficiently than you can. And that's why it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring today? You see him right there. All right. You can find this man attached to UCW. He is the promoter, co-founder. He does everything in and out. He is Lord Everett Devore.
Thank you so much, Red Dog, for having me, and I acknowledge you, brother.
Hey, I like it because everybody else is the twos and we the ones. I know it's copyright. I'm not going to say it all the way through, but nonetheless, it is a lot of fun to have you on the show, and I'm super excited. Listen, we're going to hop right in because we're actually having this great conversation about it, and you were talking about how you'd been listening to a previous episode of ours, and we were talking about a good mentor and a good friend of mine, someone I just literally, I always love going through and chatting with Mad Max Morrison and Ryan Newsy. And just talking to those guys, good mentorships, and we were talking about good mentors and stuff like that. And one thing that you had said is that like people have this idea, right, that when you want to become a pro wrestler, you're like, yeah, off the jump, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to be about. And you're like, yeah, it's pretty tough to get into this business, and you kind of have to have some thick skin.
Oh, absolutely. Not only do you have to have thick skin, but I broke in 1989. And back then, the business was so much more protected. I begged for a tryout for almost a full year before I was even granted a tryout. And when I stepped through the ropes, it was a completely different world. I had the pleasure of being trained by Rufus Jones, the freight train. And when I stepped through those ropes, the first thing he did was swell my eyes shut and dropped me on my head and just beat the hell out of me for what seemed like an eternity. And the first thing that ran through my head was, oh, wait a minute. I thought all of this was fake, as most guys do when they get in the business. And I made the decision of, well, if this is the way that it is, okay, whatever. I came back the next weekend, and when I walked through the door, his jaw dropped open and goes, I never thought I'd see you again. Because at that point, I think I was 190 pounds dripping wet. Just a young punk out of high school. And then I started learning the ins and the outs of the business. And like I was telling you earlier, I mean, you said you thought about quitting when you first started, and kudos to you for not quitting, because number one, it's not for everybody. Number two, it takes a long time for things you can learn the moves. I mean, you can learn the bumps, but it takes a while to put things together so that it becomes a second nature to you. You understand the flow of the business. And it took me 15 years before I caught my first break. And as a matter of fact, I was going to quit the business when my break hit. I'd been wrestling Demolition Axe, Bill Eadie, week in and week out for, it seemed like, I think 2 years straight. And which in itself is a feat, because anybody that's ever been in the ring with Bill Eadie knows he's beyond snug. And so I asked him, I said, hey, what am I missing? Am I missing something? Why is this not working? And he said, kid, you got all the tools. You just got to be at the right place at the right time. That's all this business is. Right place, right time, and being prepared. Save up your money and follow one of the companies you want to work for. So I did. I saved up for about a year, quit my job, and I followed WCW around for almost a full year. And I came back from Florida from a nitro, and I said, I'm tired. I've spent thousands of dollars in hotel and gas and food. I'm done. And I got home, threw the bag, said I was done. And a friend of mine called and said, hey, they're going to be in Salisbury, Maryland. Are you going? And I'm like, no, I'm tired of hearing the word no. Well, hey, if you don't mind, could you take me up there? I'd like to see network and see if I can get my foot in the door. So I begrudgingly threw my bag in the car and drove up there, walked through the door, and the first thing Terry Taylor said was, "Oh my God, please tell me you have your shit." A bunch of people missed their connecting flights and they didn't have enough workers. And that was my foot in the door. Right place, right time. And then from there, I worked with USWA, spent years in CZW, and got to go all over the country working with an incredible group of people that, the business is morphed these days. Back then, the word brotherhood gets thrown around a lot. But back then, it really was a tight brotherhood because back then, once the boys knew that you were in it for the betterment of the company and not just trying to hot dog it, they would look after the younger guys. They would say, hey, do this, don't do this, and this is why. And by the way, there's a show going on here. Why don't you go see if you can get booked? Today's generation, they've got it so much easier. Social media has just made it to where you don't have to do the drives anymore. You just put your little resume out there and promoters will surf it and find the talent and you come to work. And back then, we had to drive 14, 15 hours one way and you weren't even booked on the show. You drove that drive just to introduce yourself, help set up the ring, take it down, and try out, see if you could get a spot.
It's funny because I still have like that mentality of where and I guess I don't drive like the 14, 15 hour drives, but anywhere from like 5 to 6, like if it's within earshot, and I call that earshot 5 to 6, I'll make that drive and go see somebody and go talk to somebody. I know it was recently I went to a company, I don't want to drop their name, but I took my friend who was on the card, I drove him up and we drove up and we went to the show. And I had my gear bag with me, but the card was full. And I actually had just got I don't want to say injured, I got hurt, right? But it was to the point where I was limping noticeably. And one of the bookers saw me and they're like, I really wish you would have told me you were coming on the show or coming to the show. I would have booked you on this card. And I was like, I would have grit and bared it. I would have wrapped my ankle up and whatever it took. But, they're like, oh, if we only knew you, brother, you would have been on the show. And I was like, okay. But I made the drive and they appreciated the fact that I brought a talent up with me that was on the show. And he was actually supposed to be in their title match. So it was cool that we were able to get that. And then since then, got ghosted. I was like, you know what? It is what it is. That's what's going to happen. I was like, there's other avenues to go travel. There's other companies to go work for. And I feel like that's a big difference because I can't speak for what it was like in the 90s, but for us, I know that there's tons and tons of independent promotions that are always running on the weekends. And so to open up my phone, go through Facebook and just say what shows are open up on this day. And I have friends who are just like, oh, you can go to this show, you can go to that show, you can go to this place. I know that promoter, I can get you in with this person. I'm like, okay, because they know that if it's within 4 hours, I'll make that drive to go just help out or do whatever they need me to do.
And I'm telling you, to this day, that is a rarity nowadays because I've tried to book people. I'm not going to drop any names, but I've tried to book people. And the first thing out of their mouth wasn't money. It was how far of a drive. And when I told them what city it was in, they said, hold on. They Google mapped it. They went, no, that's more than a 2-hour drive, man. I don't do that. And I'm like, how do you grow as a performer if you don't get out there in front of an audience? Because a lot of the guys today don't understand this. If you lock yourself into a region, you're capping yourself because there's a vast difference between working a Southern crowd and working a Northern crowd and working in the Midwest. They're completely different audiences. I work down South. I could do no wrong. I could light a baby on fire. I'd still get cheered. I go up north. All I had to do was walk through the curtain and I was getting stabbed. It's truly a completely different world. And you had to learn how to adjust yourself accordingly. Irregardless of how you were booked, you had to adjust on the way to the ring or mid-match on where you were going to take that story and still keep what the promoter wanted done, but to make it so that everybody got their money's worth. And today you just don't see that. It's a whole different world. It's not necessarily always a bad thing, but it's definitely different, and it's hard to get guys on the same page as you when they don't understand where you're coming from with that point of view of, you might be a big baby up in Pennsylvania, but when you come down here, you're going to be hated. And that's a hard transition for someone because they walk through the door and they throw their hands up in the air and the crowd goes boo and they're like, oh crap, what do I do? Well, if you were out doing those drives and making those shows, you would have already known.
Yeah, I feel like that's one thing that people, and it's something that I'm very, I say like privileged that my trainer has been very adamant in saying this all the time. You should be able to work as a baby and as a heel, so that way, if you think you're a baby and you come out and the boos happen, that you're able to look at your opponent and be like, "Yo, switch," and then you just switch the roles up, and the match can still get planned out the same way. Some things might change here and there, but overall, like you're able to just switch back and forth. And so I'm very excited because when I went and I had a tryout match for the Wrestling Open up in Massachusetts, up in Worcester. When I went there, they wanted me to work as a heel in my practice match. And I hadn't worked too many matches as a heel. So when I got the opportunity, it didn't go over smoothly, but it was okay because, like, to me, it was a learning experience. I knew it was like my second time working heel. So the next time that I went to Delaware, and they wanted me to run as a heel with a couple of my friends. I was like, oh, I got this. I know exactly what I can do now. And I started pushing buttons, and people were getting mad at me. And I had one lady so frustrated that I was working the crowd as a babyface, and the crowd was like super behind me and stuff. So it's learning how to flip that switch, and then understanding, like you said, like you get your reps in. And that next show, I was in Pennsylvania, so I went from learning how to work as a heel in Massachusetts to working as a heel in Delaware to working as a babyface in Pennsylvania, and then going back down to Maryland and like training and like teaching and helping. So it's always kind of eye opening to see all the different crowds and how they respond to you.
Now, what do you prefer working, baby or heel?
I think I'm very much a lame heel. Like I know a lot of people will say they're kind of like the opposite, where they're like, I'm that white meat baby
White meat
face.
baby face. Uh-huh.
And some people will be like, oh, but I'm a great heel. And I think I'm the opposite. I think I'm an okay heel. Like, yeah, I can talk trash. But because of my character and what I portray, like I think I'm very more entertaining as a face.
I've always enjoyed working a heel more. Now, some people will tell you that as a heel is easy, but it's actually harder if you think about it because anybody can go out there and just say you suck
Yeah.
and draw a little bit of heat. But working as a heel on a regular and steady basis, I enjoyed it because it forced you to be more creative and not fall back on, hey, you suck, put your teeth back in your mouth. You'd have to go out there night after night. And again, with the different crowds, they respond to different things because there were some crowds, guys would walk out there and go, hey, you got two teeth in your mouth, one's in your front pocket. And it would do that. It would draw a laugh from the crowd instead of making them mad. They didn't understand the concept of the psychology of the heel because that's what truly drives the match. A real heel can do comedic spots, don't get me wrong, but the true worth of the heel is it doesn't matter who he's standing across from, that crowd will cheer them because they want to see you get beat up.
Yeah, that was something that I learned. This actually, for anybody wondering, we're recording this 1 week out from 1CW, so a lot of people understand like what we're talking about. So I was at a show at 1CW, and I had a crowd, and I was just there. That was on the outside, just kind of helping. Like I was, managing, and I was just getting the crowd so heated that when the guys did a dive spot, as soon as I got taken out, the whole place erupted because they're like, "Yeah, he finally got punched in the face," and I was like, "Good, this is my
Yep.
job." And so I got more heat because I just grabbed the guy's leg and I just held on to it, and he was trying to like obviously like get back in to save his tag partner, and he wasn't getting back in regardless, even if it was even if it was shoot or not, he was never getting back in the ring.
And that's the beauty of being a heel. When you do your job the right way, something as simplistic as grabbing that leg and not allowing the tag will get the same amount of pop, if not more, than going through a flaming table.
Right.
Excuse me.
I just think that there's like this aspect of like wrestling that's missing in like the storytelling aspect, right? Because like I know a lot of kids, and let me be honest, there's a lot of great workers out there, a lot of great workers, but it's like it was something I brought up to a couple friends and I talked to them about it, and I was like, listen, so doing a 450 is one of the hardest things that's out there in today's wrestling, right? Like, but the problem I have with the 450 is I thought it stopped becoming cool when I was able to hit one in practice. And once I hit one, I was like, okay, if I'm hitting this move and I see everybody else hitting this move no longer is as special as what I thought it was. And so I want to do something else that's going to get people to either like me or dislike me. And like I had a lady, she was yelling at me at an event, and she was telling me that, she was talking about my friend, one of my tag partners, and she's like, he's looking a little frail. And I looked at her, I was like, you can't even spell frail. And she's like, yes, I can. I was like, go ahead, spell it for me. And she goes, F, and I just walked away. And she just erupted. But it was like, it's those things that you need to do that, like, to get like those heat. And on the other side, right, like as a babyface, I like cracking jokes at the expense of the heel, right? Because that's just my mercenary character is more like Deadpool. So I had a guy, he punched me in the face, and I shot him against the ropes, and I swept his leg out. And as I sweep his leg out, I just dive right next to him, and I just put my hand, like I'm just laying right next to him. And the crowd got really quiet because they knew I was going to say something. And I was like, I love how you fall for me. And then the crowd just starts laughing and stuff, and it's comedic. And it's like, I know I'm pretty creative when it comes to like saying different things and getting people like into the match. But I feel like when it comes to storytelling, like that's not something that happens anymore. Like people are like, oh, I want to go hit a pile driver on a chair because it's cool. Like, but is there a reason that you want to do this? I ask that question all the time. Like, why do you want to do that? What makes it that you have to do this in that spot?
I was booking for a company down in North Carolina, Wilmington. We did a show, and the guy had a manager, and I said, okay, this is the finish. He came out with an umbrella, and I said, at some point, you're going to work your way over and go to grab the umbrella. You're going to hold it on the rope. The referee's going to catch it. He's going to kick the rope. The manager's going to let go of the umbrella. It's going to fly up, crack yourself in the head. You lay down, take the 3 count. That way, you lost because of your mistake. That'll never work. I walked away. I let myself calm down a little bit. I came back. I said, look, this is going to work. Trust me. It's one of the oldest spots in the business. It's never going to work. It's never going to work. I said, fine, pack your bag and go home. There's a bunch of other guys here that want to work. Begrudgingly, he said, fine, whatever, I'll do the spot. It got one of the bigger pops that night on a heel because it followed the old school. There was a story behind the finish. He went to cheat and it backfired. And you're right. And the reason that the storytelling doesn't happen anymore is because the business morphed. And I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion, and Twitter's going to light up and cry and go, you don't like AEW or anything. And it's not that. I appreciate AEW for what it is. They're going to be great someday. They're not great right now. They're in their infancy stages. They still got growing pains. They're still trying to figure out what their end game is really going to be besides I beat WWE in ratings. What has happened to the business is the storytelling got put to the side because they became more concerned about the wow moves. Popping the boys in the back, popping the people sitting at ringside, not the fans, but the people sitting at ringside, popping the announcers. They got away from, and I still say this to this day, one of the greatest storytellers of this is is Ricky Morton. I've worked Ricky probably at least 200 times. Never ever did we work the same match. Never ever did we have the same finish. And he drew more sympathy as a baby because of his story and not any flashy moves that we did. It was his connection and storytelling with the audience and getting the audience to believe that, oh my God, he's going to lose if I don't cheer from him. And that's what this business has gotten away from. They're more concerned about, and rightfully so, because it's no longer, it's always been sports entertainment. That's going to be another unpopular opinion. It's been sports entertainment from day one. McMahon just pulled the curtain away and said that this is what it is. But it's always been sports entertainment. And the best way that this business was explained to me is it's a live variety show. And when it's done correctly, there's something for everybody. There's something for the girls. There's something for the guys. There's something for the older generation. And everybody gets their part of partaking in the matches when their person or persons come out. And they gotten away from that because they're more concerned about the digits on the screen or how many T-shirts are being sold. And rightfully so. It's $1 billion industry. And they do need to be concerned about that. But one of the things that I'm excited about that I know a lot of people are kind of on the fence on what's going to happen with the WWE now. But when I was sitting talking to Dusty back when he first went to work for Vince, after WCW got sold, was he was trying to convince them to keep ECW and WCW alive as a separate entity. And not for selfish reasons. He didn't want to have another place to go book. He was looking at the bigger picture. Give Stephanie ECW, let her run it, or give Shane ECW, let him run it any way he wants to. It provides another venue for the boys to go learn. Give Stephanie WCW or Shane WCW, whoever, let them run it as a separate entity. It's still under the umbrella, but let them run it the way they want to run it, because it provides quote unquote competition, but it provides another venue for guys to learn their craft.
Right.
And that's the other thing that's missing is the territories. I was blessed to work for the last territory, USWA. And you don't get that anymore. And you can still learn a lot if you're willing to do the drives, because like you said, there's a million independents out there that are running fairly frequently now. You can actually make money in this business the way that you could not before. You know, I've seen guys walk away from merchandise tables with $300 and $400 when back in the day, if you made $50, you know, you got to eat at Denny's instead of Waffle House. And, you know, the opportunity is there if they want to do it. But, you know, going back to the story thing, you know, one of the biggest pieces of advice I got was from Dutch Mantell in the USWA. I said, you know, how do I get over better as a heel? I'm struggling. I don't want to be stale. And he said, ignore him. I said, what do you mean ignore him? He said, basic human psychology. You ask somebody a question and they ignore you. What's your initial response? How dare you ignore me? And so you push harder to get that answer. And the more they ignore you, the more you get pissed off. And all of a sudden that light just clicked on of, oh crap, I don't have to say anything to these people. I don't even have to acknowledge that they're in the room. And it makes them that much more want to see me get my ass kicked because, you know, how dare this guy, to steal the term from Roman, how dare you not acknowledge me? I paid my hard-earned money. The least you could do is tell me to shut up. Well, you know what? You're not worth my time. And that just incensed him even more.
I like that though. And I never thought about that. That's crazy. Because I always feel like I always try to have like a genuine connection with at least one person in the crowd. And I get to get that person to like dislike me or like me, depending on where they want me to work. And so, yeah, I never thought about that. Like, just, nah, I don't have to talk to you. Just, I don't gotta make eye contact with you.
Right.
Like
People hate it. You know, that's one of the big, that's still one of the big curtains that's on this business is the boys and the girls don't get properly schooled on what the real psychology is. There is no mystery psychology. It's basic human psychology. Al Snow is one of the greatest psychologists out there. Go watch his videos. He breaks down the psychology a millionfold. You go out there. Have you ever thrown a closed fist?
I have thrown one closed fist.
And what happened?
Yeah. We could talk about that off air.
No, but I mean in the middle of the match, not a shoot. But have you ever thrown a closed fist during a match?
Yeah. I knew where the question was going.
Why did you throw it? Because if you've ever been in a real fist fight, what happens when you throw that closed fist?
Yeah.
It gets real.
Mm-hmm.
Because the person you hit is automatically going to go, oh no, motherfucker, no, you just did not hit me. And there is no high flying grappling after that. It goes to a brawl.
Right.
So why do you see guys go in there and the first thing, the bell rings and they're over there tagging each other in the head 50 times while the crowd is chanting, "This is awesome."
Right.
They're doing it strictly for that chant of "This is awesome." And it can be saved. And I think that's one of the things that Hunter is going to do is, there was a comment that he made a long time ago of old school can come back. It really can, because everything that everybody considers old school would now be considered new school because this generation knows nothing about it.
Right.
They can go back to the original formula and everybody's going to stand there going, oh my God, what did I just watch? You can go back to the days of, the name escapes me, Ivan Putski, the heart touch. You can go back to that. You hit that guy so hard in the chest, he flatlines. People will buy that now. They'll have trouble with it at first, but you can get back to that original concept because it's no longer a thing. Like you said, everybody's a driver on a chair that's on fire, that's on top of 5 piranhas waiting underneath the pit of gators. Everybody's doing that now. And everybody's desensitized to it now. I think that was one of the greatest things about Brock Lesnar winning over Taker. Nobody believed it would happen.
Right.
And to this day, even Paul Heyman has said there's 3 people that know what really happened that night. That's Lesnar, Taker, and McMahon. You can speculate on it all you want, but those are the 3 people that know what happened that night.
Yeah. It's been crazy. So I want to caveat that story, by the way, about my closed fist. It wasn't fully closed, but it was just enough that we'll talk more about it. But I just want to put it out there because I know
I'm not going to chastise you. The business is
it's just the person who watches the show. Hi, Rodney. We had a match and shit went disastrously after a yay boo spot, and 100% feel horrible about it, and I still feel horrible about it. So I just want to put it out there.
But did you learn anything from it?
Oh yeah, I learned really quick. Just when and this is something that probably I could just throw out there as advice. When you think you have something, always double check. Always double check. Just always double check wherever you're gonna go. Range wise, it's something that's very easy to lose. And sometimes what happens is somebody may move a certain way and it changes the range and how you throw something. And sometimes accidents happen. And so we talk about it all the time. And we look back, we went back and we watched some of the footage that happened. And we've talked about what happened and why it happened. And we're both still relatively green in the business. And, unfortunately, I caught, and this is going to come out anyway, I caught him in the jaw. And I broke his jaw. And so, I know accidents happen in the business, but it's something that I've been super apologetic about. And all my friends have been getting in and talking to me and telling me, and even Rodney himself, right, was dude, accidents happen. We know we sign up for when we get into this business, accidents happen. And it was what it was. And so I had to I spent a whole week trying to forgive myself for something that happened. And I was like, my fault.
and that's a very important thing is accidents are going to happen. And there's a difference between shooting on somebody or allowing somebody to take a bad bump that you know is going to end badly in an accident. You should never beat yourself up over an accident. It happens all the time. I was working a cat down in Jacksonville, and he did the running plancha over the rope, and I had never really taken a whole lot of those. And so when he jumped and when he ran and he jumped, I wasn't positioned right. And so I caught him with just my fingertips, and he pretty much did the Wile E. Coyote splat on the floor. And then Barbarian walked up to me after the match, and he goes, dude, he goes, accidents happen, but this is what you got to do to fix this. If you see he's that high up in the air, it's still your responsibility to jump up. It doesn't matter at that point. His safety is what's more important. You jump up and you pull him into you to ensure that he lands badly. If you end up taking the brunt of the fall, then that's your responsibility. And from that day forward, when anybody jumped, I made sure that what they felt was my bear hug, and they felt my breath leaving my chest as we hit the floor.
Yeah, that was something that that my trainer had taken me through and taught me like how to catch on a dive, and I haven't caught too many, right? So I don't want to say I'm fortunate. It's just I tell people all the time, like, I'm not trying to put myself in a position to do that, but it's something that I should be doing anyway. Is just learning how to take reps for it. So, one of the guys made his dive through the rope, and the only thing I thought about was I just grabbed him and just pulled him in as tight as I could into me.
That's it, because you never know who you're going to work. I mean, right. I went up north to New Jersey and ended up working a cat from AAA. Had never been in the ring with the guy from AAA. I'd watched it on TV, but I had no clue what those guys were truly about. You hear stories, you watch the matches, but it's a whole different world when you're in there working with them. And, I'm used to the old school, slow down, tell a story. This guy was ping-ponging off the ropes to the point where I thought I was going to pop 5 minutes into the match. But it taught me a very valuable lesson that you got to be prepared no matter what. If you get asked to hang with the guy that has the oxygen tank of the space shuttle, you better suck it up and do the best that you can.
Yeah. I have been very fortunate to work with guys from like House of Glory, as well as guys who worked at NCW, as well as CZW, and then the ROH dojo. So like everybody has like this different and unique style. So I've been able to like slowly like understand like, all right, that person was trained in lucha, so I know to expect this, this, and this. That person was trained as a technician. I know to expect this, this, and this. So like I've been kind of good. And then my trainer, Sickened, his trainer was Ruckus. So like now I get to work with Ruckus directly, and he's been teaching me like a lot of new stuff too. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like I can add this to the playbook. I can work on this stuff. I can work on that stuff. So it's been interesting to be able to pick the minds of like someone like the biggest names in the business and just ask them like, and to me, it sounds like silly questions. And I'm sure to them, they're just like, listen, this is a kid who's clearly learning. So he's just trying to figure it out. And I don't know. It's something I definitely appreciate. I don't take for granted.
Ruckus is a hell of a hand. And on a side note, man, there's no stupid questions. There's only stupid answers.
I like that response. So listen, as a promoter, I'd like to know, what are kind of like some of the key elements that you look for from like somebody who maybe wants to get a shot into your promotion?
What I look for first and foremost is how you conduct yourself business-wise. One of my pet peeves is tag a promoter you want to see me work with. If you really want to work with me, take the initiative, email me, text me, instant message me, whatever. Start a dialogue, because I understand social media is an important part of the business now, but I'm still of the old school mentality. I want to talk to you. I want to know what your vision is, because getting you to understand my vision and me understanding your vision is the most important aspect, other than just you coming in, putting your gear on and going out and cutting a flip, because you can do that anywhere. What I need out of a performer is somebody that understands, and I hope it's probably going to sound condescending, but it's really not. What I look for is a guy that understands his placement on the card, what's expected of him, and how to perform that duty to the best of his ability. Still get over, and I'm not talking about winning. Still get over with the crowd, because you got to build repertoire with the crowd. Because if you're coming in, it's one thing if you're coming in as talent enhancement or whatever they call it nowadays, but you still got to build repertoire with the fans, because if you don't build a repertoire with the fans, nobody's going to pay to see you again, no matter how awesome of a flip you cut. They may remember the flip, they won't remember you. And that was another thing that Dusty told me was, you can go out there and you can cut your head off. They're going to remember that you bled to death, but they won't remember you. They'll remember you if you made a connection with them and made them have a reason to either hate you, to pay to see you get your ass kicked, or you made a connection enough that they wanted to see you go over, whether you went over or not, but they want to pay to see you either get redemption or get revenge. And then lastly is the thought process of your character. My other biggest pet peeve is, hey man, tell me about your character. I'm a brawler. Okay, that's nice. I didn't ask you what you do in the ring. I asked you to tell me about your character. It might be a generational thing. I don't know, but back in the day, we actually built a folder that you gave to promoters of, this is my character. This is where my character came from. This is why he entered professional wrestling. This is his goal besides money and a belt. There was a rhyme and a reason for your character. And not everybody has to have a character. Don't get me wrong. Not everybody has to have a character, but what's your ring name?
Oh, Red Dog.
Right. Tell me who. No, I know. I'm asking a rhetorical question. Who is Red Dog?
Oh, so Red Dog is the Air Force veteran intel specialist, the one you call on when you need to get the job done. Your friendly neighborhood Red Dog. More importantly, he is 5'9", 6'2", depending on what convenience store he's coming from, and his weight for it. No one needs to know, it's classified. And his location where he comes from is the Misfit of Island Toys. The reason he got into pro wrestling was because he wanted to prove that he could be the best mercenary with a sense of humor, because he loves the long walks on the beach with the soothing sounds of the Backstreet Boys and pet cats, even though he doesn't like cats. He loves dogs.
And do you know how many people can't even answer that far?
Yeah. I could imagine there's a bunch, because I feel like when I do talk to people, I ask them about their character and they'll tell me that they're like, I'm a top wrestler. I'm like, cool. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And because the one thing I took into account, and this was something that I was forced into be trained when I was working with Sicken. Nick would say, he's like, why does your character do the things that he does? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. So I had to ask for questions. Like the first question is who, then what, and then you have to ask those digging questions, which is why and how. And like that's how I was able to like develop this whole world on what I wanted.
There's 5 of them: who, what, where, when, why.
Right. Well, I feel like and that's why I was like, where I came from was I didn't want, because I want people to know that it's still a mystery. Like Red Dog is still like, I can tell people here, my shoot height is 5'10", but I like to tell people it's 5'9" to 6'2", because like when you're running from a convenience store, like nobody's gonna pin your height.
My point is what that showed me was you put actual back thought into your character. And you can use that, as you so successfully do, with your intro. And a lot of guys don't. I put out an ad that I was looking for monsters. And I put very specific, if you're not really a monster, don't reply to this ad. I had guys 5'5" and below. Now, don't get me wrong, they were in phenomenal shape. But I had 5'5" guys answering the ad. And I wasn't being rude, but I would say, well, what makes you think you're a monster? My 10-year-old is almost 5'5". And I'm like, tell me what you perceive a monster to be. And they're like, well, scary. Okay, but why is he scary? What makes him scary? Scary to me, a monster to me is when that person walks through that curtain, the whole room goes, oh shit. And I was lucky and fortunate enough. I'm going to throw a little shout out if you don't mind. The guy that answered that ad that was a pleasant surprise was Everett.
Mm.
When he walked in the room, even the boys turned their head and went, oh shit. Because he sent me the photo and I said, okay, are you wearing lifts or is this really your height? No, this is really my height. I wear a little bit of lift, but this is really my height. And when he walked through the door, I was like, yes, you really are 6'6". You separated yourself from everybody in that locker room just by your height. And going back to what you said, what do you look for? He said, what do you want done? I told him what he wanted done. And he said, okay, I understand. I understand my place on the card. He walked out and exceeded all of my expectations simply because he understood the assignment. And I wish more guys would understand the assignment. Yes, I know every worker's goal is to be in the main event. I know every worker's goal is to wear the belt. I know every worker's goal is to be the top draw. But there is a reason, there's a rhyme and a reason for everybody on the placement of the card. A lot of the guys don't subscribe to the theory anymore. The most important match on the card is not the main event. It's the first match. It always has been and it always will be. It sets the tone for the rest of the night. The first match is the most important, and the first match, if you have an intermission, after the intermission, is the second most important one because you're going to lose your momentum at intermission. So whatever you throw on after intermission has to recapture their imagination and build that momentum up to the main event. The main event, a lot of guys misunderstand. They think they got to go out there and get that Dave Meltzer 5-star match. The biggest draw in this industry has always been what?
Get over.
To get over. And the most successful people got over by doing what? 6 moves at the most.
Yeah.
They didn't go out there and put on 5-star matches. They didn't have to. They had worked their way up the ladder to the point where the crowd wanted to see them and experience them, not watch their struggle. They wanted to see the storyline struggle, but they didn't pay to see the 5-star splash through a table. They paid for the main event to be entertained. The meat and the potatoes for me always has been the lower half of the card. The lower half of the card has to be banging. And so I look for guys that understand that if I put you on the first or the second match, it's not a slap in the face to you. And if anything, it tells me that I think of you enough that you're going to do what I need you to do to that crowd to get them on fire. And a lot of guys don't understand that. Well, I'm not coming unless I'm in the main event. Okay. And that, that's my other pet peeve is, well, I need $300. Okay. I had one guy, he's coming from Buffalo, New York. He said he wanted $800. I said, okay, read me your resume. Well, I've been in the business 3 years. I said, okay, you got any TV time? No. I said, well, what makes you think you're worth $800? Nobody knows who you are. Well, this is what I need. Well, I get it. I want people to make money because I've never been, and you can ask any of the guys that work for me, I've never been the hot dog and handshake guys. Everybody, we agree upon the money before you come, and 9 times out of 10, that envelope is in your hand before the show starts. So it's never been about the money thing for me. It's always been about, do you understand your assignment and how easy are you to do business? If I ask you to go out there and do the favor, it isn't a slap in your face. If I'm asking you to do the favor, it's because I know that the crowd is going to respond to that favor the way that I need them to respond. And a lot of the guys, especially today, they're under this illusion, and some of it is the programming that goes on. When that company started saying, well, wins and losses do matter. No, they don't. They've never mattered. I made more money in this industry putting people over than I did going over. I had people pay me very good money to come in and lay down for their people because they knew that when that 3 count hit, it meant something. And so getting guys, what I look for is guys that don't just want to come wrestle. Because I can pull 50 people from my backyard, so to speak, not really backyard workers, but I can pull 50 people from this area to just go out there and work. I want people that are going to go out there and entertain, because that's the purpose of a wrestling event, is to entertain the people. Yeah. I know I'm old school babbling, but it's still true.
Yeah, no, I love it because there's like so much like right there in the middle, like, and that's what I think people have to understand. Like, I know for me, the 3 matches that I like to work, right, are the first one, the one before intermission, or the one right after intermission, because I can either start the show on fire, either way, before or after intermission, or either the start of the show, or I can leave that crowd wanting so much more that they have to come back after intermission to watch the rest of the show. And those are my 3 favorite spots. Like, I'm going front. I'm one of those guys too, right? Like, I want to work the main event too. But at the end of the day, if the main event isn't the most important match, put me in a match that you think that I'm going to fit in. And I think that it's important. Like, at my point, and like, who am I to especially to be demanding, hey, I want the main event spot. No, I want to be able to just work on your card. That's where I'm at right now with my career. But I also understand, what matches are important, and I want to work those matches because I feel like those matches are the ones that, like I said, you're either gonna get the crowd hot, or you're gonna want the crowd wanting more, and that's what I think is important, at least when I look at it, because I think about it the same way. Like Bret Hart, I know a lot of people are like, he was so boring. Cool. He had like 5 moves, and those 5 moves everybody popped for, whether it was a bulldog, or it was the atomic drop, or it was the sharpshooter, right? People popped for all those moves. People popped for Shawn Michaels when he was hitting like the elbow drop, because they really believed he was going to win with the elbow drop, and he never won with elbow drop. But then he'd hit the super kick, and the crowd pops even louder for a super kick, right? So I think about those, and like John Cena is another example of like the 5 moves. Everybody knows the 5 moves of doom that he hits, and that's how they know they're going to wrap up the match. So I understand. And that's why I was like, I've become like a student, and I noticed it. Actually, I noticed it at an AEW event in Baltimore. I was there, I was watching, and I had stopped watching midway through as a fan and started watching it more. And this was like this year, actually. Stopped watching it as a fan and started watching it more as a worker and understanding like where everybody was moving and how the pace was for each match. In fact, you probably could go back now and watch that show, watch the Baltimore episode. 1, you'll see me because John Moxley walks right by me. But 2, in the main event, when it was Mercedes Martinez and Deonna Purrazzo, the whole crowd goes quiet, right, for a wrestling spot. But there's like this move that Deonna Purrazzo hits, like in chain wrestling. She hits it, and it looks like she snaps Mercedes' elbow. And you just hear me in the back, "This is wrestling!" Just loud as shit. And I know the mic's picked up because the hard cam was on my side. But I was so happy.
And that's a key aspect of learning this business. Is when I was working for WCW, I'd go out there, I'd do my match, I would change my clothes, and I would go sit at the very top of the nosebleed. And I had a little notepad, and I would sit there and take notes because I know what goes on in the ring. I started paying attention to the crowd and where they responded and why did it work and why didn't it go over. Because, being in the business, when you get done with the match, you get privy information that other people don't. You get to hear the ass chewings that go on or the praise that goes on. And so you get to understand, oh, that's why that didn't work. It wasn't necessarily the wrong move. it was done in the wrong time or the wrong placement or the wrong way. And it's those intricacies and those little things that count more than anything else. Because again, anybody can learn how to bump, but understanding where you bump and why is more important than learning the bump.
Yeah, it was something O'Shea had told me too. O'Shea was like, I need you to watch your favorite match 3 times in a row. He's like, once watch it as a fan, because that's why you're picking that match, because that you're a fan of that match.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, second time, watch it without the volume. And he's like, and study the match from there. He's like, and the third time you watch it, he's like, watch it, but watch the crowd. Don't watch the wrestlers. You know the match. You've seen it twice now. He's like, but watch the crowd. And it was funny because like I went back and my favorite match of all time is Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio at Halloween Havoc '97. I make that no secret. That's a great match. But the funniest thing is everybody talks about that DDT that Rey Mysterio hit, right? Like that reverse DDT. And the crowd never popped.
Yep.
And I look back and I watch it, like, yo, why didn't the crowd pop? And you saying it right there, because it was done at the wrong time.
It was done at the wrong time.
But it
the
was
two
still
greatest
cool.
matches that you need to go back and watch, and it's funny you brought up Bret Hart. The two greatest matches that you need to watch, or any worker should really go and study, is Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect in SummerSlam of '91, I think it was, and Bret Hart versus Randy Savage, and it was Saturday night's main event where Miss Elizabeth got pushed aside at the end. It was just before the Mega Powers exploded.
Okay.
Those are two of the greatest psychological matches you will ever see, and nothing in there was hard. It was all easy, but it was all 100% perfect placement. And that's why those matches stole the show. And that's why Steamboat and Macho Man stole WrestleMania 3.
I love that match.
They went over that match move for move, and they dissected it to the point that there was no mistakes. And they knew before they even entered that building that every move was in the right place at the right time. And that's why that match went over. It had nothing to do with anything else. And regardless of what anybody else says, they did go in there to steal the show. Hogan loves to throw his little thing out there. Oh, they weren't trying to steal the show. Yeah, they were. They wanted to show that they were the two best workers on that card, and they were.
Yeah, that I watched that match probably 5 or 6 times. It's August, if anybody's wondering, between January and August, because I try to flip through as many matches as I can, and I'm still trying to keep up with the new product too, which is very difficult. But yeah, I love that match, and you're right, like everything gets placed at the right time, and like without a doubt, Macho Man and Ricky the Steamboat and Kurt Hennig are like 3 of my favorite performers to watch, because psychologically they're so smooth and tactful in the ring, with just like the persona and how they handle themselves and how they handle the crowd. They know how to, like, oh man, WrestleMania 3, like there's everybody in that arena, and everybody single-handedly are like gasping at everything that Steamboat and Macho Man are doing. And it's like, that is true power right there. Just like watching them work the crowd and just be like,
And one of my favorite things about Kurt Hennig wasn't just his technical prowess in the ring, was his timing. He took something as subtle and as easy to do is getting shot off to the ropes, holding onto the ropes and powdering out. That move got him more heat than any cheating move he ever did. And everybody talked about Kurt Hennig and what a wonderful worker he was, but nobody ever really picked up on his timing. His timing and Steamboat's timing was almost out of this world. They understood the timing of the psychology more than they did the moves. They were both flawless in the execution of the moves, but both of them knew the timing and the psychology of why to do that there versus 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes after, to the point that it was scary. You go back and watch Steamboat and Flair. in, oh God, what pay-per-view was that in Nashville?
I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of times that those guys worked, so I'm trying to recall that
Um,
one.
I think it was a fall brawl where they beat the living piss out of each other to the fans' point, but they were barely breathing hard at the end of that match because they worked the crowd instead of working each other. And another one to go watch is, believe it or not, Dustin Rhodes versus Stunning Steve Austin back in Halloween Havoc. They put on a wrestling clinic, and neither one of them hardly did anything. It was the timing and the psychology of that match that made that the match. I think it was the match of the year that year.
Mm.
And to this day, it still holds up. 99% of what Steve Austin did before he became Stone Cold still holds up to this day. He was one of the, for me, I think he was one of the most underrated mat technicians in the industry. People slept on how good he was once he became Stone Cold, and I don't hold it against him. He reached a level that 99.99% of us never will. He reached a point where he didn't have to work. And that's your ultimate goal, is to be that guy.
Right.
They want to see your entrance more than they want to see you work. Because that's what everybody popped on, was his entrance. That shattering of the glass sent chills up down people's spines. And that badass walk to the ring and then the giving of the middle finger drew more than some of his matches did. Now, I'm not taking anything away from him. He was a great technician, even when he was Stone Cold. But if you go back and look at his early work, he barely did anything as Stone Cold, except for the match he did with Bret Hart.
Right. Yeah, I think it's something to go back when you think about like what Austin, like especially when Austin became Stone Cold. Like again, it goes back to the 5 moves that he did, right? From the press to the stunner, right? He had the stomps in the corner. Like you knew the spots, you saw them every single time, and you knew exactly when he was going to hit each one of them. But you popped every time because you're like, oh, Austin brought me. Like you knew the moment that the heel whips off Austin off the ropes, you're like, oh, he's gonna duck the clothesline, or he's starting the clothesline, ducks the clothesline, he's gonna jump up and he's gonna start punching him in the face. You knew that that was happening, and every single time that it did it, you popped. Like,
yep.
So
it's I'm going to draw heat on this because I know he's a big superstar now, but it's just like the people's elbow.
Yes.
Anybody who's ever watched one of his matches, that is the dumbest move you will ever see in wrestling. But it put asses in the seat. People paid money to see the people's elbow.
Yeah.
They paid to see him trash talk. They didn't pay to see him wrestle a match. They paid to see the people's elbow, the raising of the eyebrow, the trash talk, and maybe the rock bottom. But what they really popped for was the people's elbow.
Yep. The moment that the Rock came through, hit the spine buster, and just stood up and looked at everybody, everything was happening. Like, especially
And
with like I was gonna say Cena especially, right? Cena, like, he comes in, he gets thrown off the ropes, he hits his first shoulder block. You already know what's happening. And the moment that he stands up, he stares at the crowd and he just puts his hands up in the air, like everybody's going off. So I don't know. I feel like when I look through my playlist of like moves that I know that I can do, I have to listen to the crowd a lot because I'm like, will this move get over and where will it get over at most? And I think that's where I'm still like, I was reading Mike Quackenbush's book, and he was talking. It's 7 keys to being a great performer, and in there he's talking about. It's in the first chapter, learning your greatest hits, and so like I'm like, all right, I know that the crowd really loves this move, and they really like this move, and I've heard people pop for this move. All right, so we know that these are going to be things I'll keep in my key, like in my guard. Now I just got to figure out where I'm going to move them. And when the crowd's different, how I'm gonna move them. So I was like, it's fun to like learn and to, like,
and that's the true key to learning this business. I got told very early, and I didn't understand it until much later in my career. There's a reason those 5 or 6 moves exist. They can do other moves, but they went through trial and error, also known as house shows. They went through trial and error, threw against a wall, saw what stuck, saw what worked, worked on it to the point that that move became important. That got added to the repertoire. Then they tried another move and it didn't work. Fine, they threw it away. They tried another move. Oh, that got a pop. Okay, that's move number 2. You build yours, and that's why I always tell the young kids today, you got to do the drives. You got to get out there. It doesn't matter if you're working in front of 10 people or 500 or 1,000. Get out there, try different things, throw it against a wall, but more importantly, remember what worked and perfect that. Not in practice, perfect it in the matches. You get the safety of the move down in practice, but work on that move and getting it over with the crowd in front of the crowd, because you can do it. And you know this, you're training. You trained for a while. What happens in training doesn't always happen in real life. In the spur of the moment, when you get in there and, oh shit, I pulled my thigh muscle or I pulled my back. You work your way through the pain. Not everything is going to go the way it should. And it's learning, okay, I can do this. I can't do this anymore. You have that backup move that'll still pop, and you adjust accordingly. Hogan had his 5 moves. Everybody slept on Hogan. Go back and watch his work in Japan. He was a hell of a worker. He didn't have to work. He found out what moves got the biggest pops from the crowd, and he worked his match, and he built the match the same way Cena does, the same way The Rock did, the same way Stone Cold did. You build your match around those key moments. And that's how you build a great match. You have the build up, you have the cutoff, you have the comeback, and then you have the payoff.
I love it. I love it. So I have to ask this question. We've had a lot. And everybody who's been listening to this, please have your pad with you, your pad and a pen, and you better be taking like lots of notes because this is important. But we're going to move into one more question before we jump into the second best segment of the 3 Count podcast. And that is a simple thing. I love asking this question. I need one do and one don't of the locker room.
Okay. When do and when don't. Narrow that down a little bit. Are you talking about etiquette?
We can talk about whatever. It's just I love asking the question kind of vaguely because like everybody has like their different do and everybody has like their different don't that they want to talk about. Right. Some people will be like, don't be that guy who smells in the locker room. Don't fall asleep in the locker room. Don't, so it's always something different, but I love just the generality of it.
Well, most importantly, don't be the smelly guy in the locker room. I can't press that enough. I don't care if you're working for $200 a night or if you're working for $20 a night. There's no reason why you can't wash your gear and take care of yourself. That's another thing that has slipped away with the generational gap is a lot of the guys of today look at the customs of yesterday and they just kind of wash it in, that's the way the old timers think. Well, there was a reason for everything. Shaving. There's a reason guys shave. Well, it's a whole multitude of reasons why you shave, especially if you're on TV. Your muscles are more defined if there's no hair in the way. You can get a darker looking tan. And as I'm about to age myself, for those of us out there that still use hot stuff, you get a darker tan, you look better if there's no hair. And the other reason is nobody wants to get into a headlock with the polar bear that's sweating. It cuts down on body odor. It's just a simple thing of, I respect you as a person and a performer, not to make you gag when I put you in a headlock. The other thing is the locker room etiquette of don't be that guy that comes in the locker room and doesn't say hello to everybody. I cannot state this any more clear. This is another thing that the new generation is just kind of, that happened back then. It doesn't matter. It does matter. It's a show of respect. You go up, you introduce yourself, you say hi. You don't have to like the person to acknowledge them and say hi. Hey man, good to meet you. Thanks for being here. Shake everybody's hand. I know the whole limp fish handshake thing is a big controversy today too. Everybody's like, oh, be a man, shake it like a man. Well, there was a reason for that handshake. And that's been lost in the wayside too. It was an unspoken rule. If you're going to work somebody, because back then the business was guarded. And so that was an acknowledgement of how you wanted to work that night. The tighter the grip, that told that guy you wanted to work snug. The looser the grip, you wanted an easy night. It was an unspoken rule.
Mm.
And the other thing I would say is say thank you to the upper deck. There's a reason they're there in the upper deck. And it doesn't matter if there's 10 people in the building or 1,500 or 10,000. Always say thank you to the upper deck. They are the ones that got booked on the upper deck for a reason. They're what the promoter feels are going to pull the crowd in and make you money. Because it truly, and that's the other thing is that guys don't understand it. It's a group effort. And there's more to it than just, hey, I'm working here this weekend. It's a group effort of everybody wants to make money. And just say thank you to the guys that if you do have a good house, say thank you to those guys that drew that house. It isn't a thing of kissing ass. It's a show of respect of, hey man, thank you for the house tonight. Because it shows them that you want to be a part of the team, not just a person in the building.
I like that. I like it a lot. See, great information here. Y'all should be writing this stuff down, man. Like seriously, or make this one of your favorites because this is definitely what it's become. But we're gonna move into the second best segment of the 3 Count podcast. You're probably trying to figure out what the first is. It's the Red Dogs Power Rankings. You can find that on most Sundays that we have our debate shows. Lately, it's just kind of been all over the place because there's so much wrestling and getting booked everywhere. I don't have time to like just put a quick 10 together. So we're going to get into the 3 Count podcast 10 count questions. And Mr. Devore, this is how it works. I'm going to fire off 10 questions at you rapid fast. And whatever your answer is, that's your answer.
All right, let's do it.
So we're going to put on the imaginary timer for added pressure. Bing. And in the words of Mike Goldberg, here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
Raw.
Favorite movie?
Damn. Goodfellas.
Hey, I like it. We're going to change this up. Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis?
Oh, shit. Got to go with Sega.
Yes. Favorite cartoon?
The original Thundercats.
Let's go. So in the aspect of Disney, were you a Gargoyles fan or were you a Darkwing Duck fan?
Oh, that's a good question. They were both pretty good. Got to give the edge to Gargoyle.
I love it. Favorite actor?
That's a tough one. I would have to say probably Denzel Washington.
I like it. I like the call. Marvel or DC?
The stinkers they've been throwing out, I got to go with DC.
Okay. I'm going to ask this question. Favorite podcast?
The original podcast Stone Cold came out with in the very beginning.
Yes.
Stone Cold Unleashed.
Is that the one where he told the story about the loofah?
Yes. Oh, dude, I pissed my pants literally laughing at that. I played it for everybody that would listen to it because it was the funniest moment in podcast history.
Yes.
Followed up by Jim Cornette's podcast.
I like that one too. So nominate one person that you want to see on this podcast.
Wow, I got to narrow it down to just one. Wow, you're really putting me on the spot. I'm going to piss a lot of people off.
It's all right. We'll talk more about it behind the scenes, and then we'll get everybody.
I would have to say the Red Scorpion.
Okay. I like it. And then last but not least, my favorite question to ask every single person who comes on this show. Favorite curse word?
Oh, wow. There's so many. They say that people that cuss are more intelligent. So, damn, my favorite curse word. Well, now that I have 3 boys that are starting to, oh, Dad said that, I'm trying to limit it, but I would have to say you can't place enough importance on the good old F bomb.
Right. I have to
And
agree.
again, when it's done at the right place.
Well, I mean, that's a word that like you can put anywhere in a situation, right? So whether you want to make it a question or you want to make it like imperative, or if you want to just be excited, or you just want to include that into a word, I think it's the best word in the world.
I'll give you a little story, and this involves Kid Cash. I love Dave to death. I've been friends with him since long before he became very prominent in the business. And we were sitting there one night partying, and something happened, and it was really weird. And he said, "Well, insert the universal question." And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And he goes, "You don't know about the universal question?" I said, "No." And he goes, "Well, this question can be fit in anywhere." The fuck's that got to do with me?
Yes. I love it. I'm really gonna take that. I'm gonna start using that everywhere.
Because it can fit into everywhere. If it's a bad thing or a good thing, well, what's that got to do with me?
Right. I love it. Well, listen, those are all my questions, and I definitely appreciate the discussion. So the last thing I need is for you to let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
They can find me on Twitter at Lord Devore. And they can find us at Facebook at UCW Forever, or they can go to the website ucwforever.com. And don't forget to buy the merchandise at Pro Wrestling Tees, UCW LLC.
There you go. See, so he gave you all the handles. He told you where you could find him. He even gave you his website and his pro wrestling tees. But you know what that means? Like every great part of a wrestling match, we got to take it home. Because this is the 3 Count Podcast Presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up this mountain called wrestling. But like every good Sherpa, you got to have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficient than you can. And that's why it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. And you see him right there next to me. It is the great and powerful Lord Everett Devore. And you guys know what to do. Tune into the next episode and be there, or you're subscribing to our YouTube channel. You're following us on all of our social media platforms, which are right there on the bottom. You're buying our merchandise as well on prowrestlingtee.com/the 3 Count Podcast. You're doing all that stuff. You're talking to your friends about us, and you're telling about how great this podcast is. You're either doing that, or you're just waiting for this episode to end. You're waiting for that outro, and then you're choosing another episode to listen to. Peace. What's going on, 3 Count Nation? I'm Clifford Red Dog Miller with the catchphrase. But what I really want you to do right now, go to twitter.com, right? Go over there, find us at the 3 Count _ pod, give us a follow, give us a like, give us a comment. We want to talk to you guys. Go to IG at the 3 Count pod. Give us a like, give us a follow, leave us a comment. We want to interact with you. Go to youtube.com, give us a subscribe, turn the bell on, turn the notifications, leave a comment. We want to talk to you. Go to anchor.fm/the 3 Count Podcast, and in there, you can leave us a message, and we will talk to you. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that we want to talk to you. We want to have fun with you guys, and we love listening to what you guys have to say. Also, one thing I need you to do for me, the 3 Count Podcast also has merchandise. Oh! At prowrestlingtees.com/the 3 Count Pod. Please go buy our t-shirts. We love you guys, and we hope you love us too. So show us some support, please.